A young American sets out for the West Bank, hoping for a summer steeped in family, tradition, and the echo of ancestral roots. But he never returns home. His name was Sayfollah Musallet, just 20 years old. A vibrant Palestinian-American whose life was cut short in a tragedy that has reverberated far beyond the hills of Sinjil, the town where he died. His death has triggered an international outcry, casting a stark spotlight on the volatile intersection of heritage, geopolitics, and the very real human cost of an enduring conflict. Was Musallet's death a tragic fluke, an inevitable result of escalating violence, or a symptom of a deeper, more systemic crisis? What does this singular loss mean for American policy, for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and for the future of a region where every life, every headline, seems to carry the weight of history itself? To understand why the killing of a single Palestinian-American has ignited such a fierce and far-reaching debate, we need to go further than the headlines. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is not simply about lines on a map. It is about identity forged over generations, about collective memory and trauma, about whose story is told and whose is erased. The West Bank, a territory roughly the size of the U.S. state of Delaware, is a patchwork of rolling hills, olive groves, ancient villages, and modern settlements. Israelis call this region Judea and Samaria, invoking biblical heritage. Palestinians see it as the heartland of their homeland, a place where family ties run deep, and where the shadow of occupation colors daily life. For decades, Israeli settlements have steadily expanded across the West Bank. These communities, often established in defiance of international law and against the wishes of local Palestinians, have become flashpoints for violence and friction. The construction of new homes, roads, and fences by settlers is not just a physical transformation of the land. It is a political act that signals permanence and control. For Palestinians, every new settlement feels like an erasure, a roadblock on the path to self-determination. Settler violence is not a new phenomenon. For years, there have been reports of attacks on Palestinian villagers, the destruction of crops and homes, and harassment that often goes unpunished. But since the 7th of October, 2023, the day the latest war between Israel and Hamas erupted, these incidents have surged to levels unseen in recent memory. According to data from the United Nations, reported attacks by Israeli settlers in the West Bank spiked by at least 13% in the first half of the current year alone. Human rights organizations warn that the true numbers may be even higher, as many attacks go unreported out of fear or a lack of faith in the authorities. Against this simmering backdrop, the town of Sinjil, located just north of Ramallah, had already been on edge. Locals describe living under a constant state of tension, with movement restricted by new fences and the ever-present risk of confrontation. For Palestinian families with relatives abroad, the summer months are often a time of reunion. Diaspora families return from Florida, from California, from cities across Europe and the Middle East, seeking to reconnect with roots, to tend to land and loved ones. Sayfollah Musallet was one such visitor. Born and raised in Tampa, Florida, Musallet was known for his generosity, ambition, and entrepreneurial spirit. He ran a small business in his hometown, and friends remember him as a young man who bridged cultures with ease, American in opportunity, Palestinian in heart. His trip to the West Bank was meant to be a celebration, a chance to see cousins, to walk the land his parents had spoken of, to experience a heritage that had always been part of his identity but never fully his own. But on a day that should have been ordinary, everything changed. According to his family, Musallet was on his family's land when a group of Israeli settlers approached, escalating a confrontation that quickly turned violent. In the chaos, the family alleges, he tried to defend his relatives and their property. The situation spiraled. Settlers reportedly blocked the arrival of an ambulance for more than 3 hours, while Musallet's condition worsened. He died before he could reach a hospital. Another Palestinian, Mohammed al-Shalabi, was also killed in the same incident, felled by gunfire as tensions erupted into tragedy. The official Israeli military account paints a very different picture. According to their statement, a violent confrontation developed after Palestinians threw stones at Israelis, sparking a clash that left at least one person dead. The Palestinian Foreign Ministry, however, insists that settlers, and possibly even Israeli soldiers, actively prevented medical help from reaching Musallet and other victims. Witnesses describe a scene of confusion and terror, villagers trapped in their homes, paramedics blocked by makeshift barricades, and the sound of gunshots echoing across the fields. The web of conflicting narratives is as dense as the olive groves themselves. In the fog of accusation and counter-accusation, one truth remains. A young man with dual citizenship, with dreams and obligations on both sides of the Atlantic, is dead. His family's grief is compounded by the knowledge that justice, in this context, is rarely swift or certain. The reaction in Washington, D.C., has been notably subdued. The United States State Department acknowledged the killing and expressed condolences to the family, but stopped short of direct condemnation or concrete policy demands. Former Arkansas governor and United States ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, took a more forceful tone. He described the killing as both a criminal and terrorist act, calling for a thorough investigation and real accountability. In his words, "There must be accountability for this criminal and terrorist act." Saif was just 20 years old. Yet for many in the Palestinian-American community, words are cold comfort. Nizar Milbs, a close friend of the Musallet family, captured the mood of frustration and skepticism. "We welcome the ambassador's statement, but is this just talk, or is there going to be action behind it?" For families who have seen loved ones killed in the West Bank before, promises of investigations have often led nowhere. The muted response from the United States government stands in stark contrast to the growing outrage among rights groups and international observers. Human Rights Watch has called for an independent inquiry. The United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Tamim Al-Khitan, issued a stern warning. Israel must immediately stop these killings, harassment, and home demolitions. Data from the United Nations highlights a disturbing trend. In just the first 6 months of the current year, the number of reported settler attacks has risen by 13% compared to the same period last year. Observers on the ground report that entire Palestinian communities are being squeezed out, their lands fenced off, and their movement restricted. This tightening grip is visible in places like Sinjil, where authorities have recently erected a 5-meter-high fence, the height of a small building, around key areas of the town. Residents say the fence is both a physical and psychological barrier, a daily reminder of their vulnerability and isolation. Activists from organizations like the Norwegian Refugee Council warn that we are watching Israel annex the West Bank as entire Palestinian communities are driven from their land. For American policymakers, the situation presents an uncomfortable dilemma. The United States has long styled itself as a broker of peace in the Middle East, providing billions of dollars in aid to Israel while also voicing support for Palestinian rights. But the credibility of this balancing act is increasingly in doubt. Earlier this year, the United States Treasury Department quietly ended sanctions on Israeli settlers accused of violence, a move that drew sharp criticism from activists who saw it as a green light for impunity. The broader trend is unmistakable. According to analysis from the International Crisis Group, the last 12 months have seen a sharp uptick not only in violence, but in the construction of new settlements, the issuing of demolition orders against Palestinian homes, and the imposition of movement restrictions that make daily life a struggle. Each new fence, each home destroyed, each life lost, pushes the dream of a two-state solution further into the realm of fantasy. So has America's decades-long approach to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict finally reached a breaking point? Or will this tragedy, like so many before it, fade into the background, another statistic in a conflict that has endured for over 75 years? To answer that, we need to look at the possible consequences and what history teaches us. The killing of Sayfollah Musallet is not just a painful headline, it is a flashpoint in a conflict that has shaped global politics for generations. Each such moment has the potential to shift the course of events, for better or for worse. International outrage is already mounting. Experts like Tamim Al-Khitan warn that unless there is an immediate halt to violence and home demolitions, the cycle of retribution and fear will only deepen. If enough pressure is brought to bear by the United Nations, by European governments, by grassroots activists, Israel might be compelled to investigate more transparently, or even reconsider some controversial settlement policies. This could offer a glimmer of hope to families who have lost loved ones, and to those who still live in daily fear. Alternatively, the pattern of escalating violence may continue. The United Nations has reported a 13% surge in settler attacks in just the first half of this year, and many fear that the true number is higher. The construction of fences and the imposition of curfews in towns like Sinjil signal a hardening of positions. Without meaningful international intervention, these measures could push the long-cherished dream of a two-state solution even further out of reach, fueling despair and instability across the region. The United States faces its own crossroads. Will it remain relatively muted, as in past incidents? Or could this case mark a genuine turning point? Historically, the United States' response to violence in the West Bank has swung between calls for calm and a reluctance to take strong action. As Nizar Milbs, a close friend of Musallet's family, succinctly put it, "We welcome the ambassador's statement, but is this just talk, or will there be real action behind it? The world is watching to see whether words will translate into policy change." The reaction from American lawmakers has been mixed. Hakeem Jeffries, the top Democrat in the United States House of Representatives, issued a public call for action, saying, "The United States government cannot continue to turn a blind eye to what is happening in the West Bank if it is truly committed to finding a just and lasting peace between Israel and the Palestinian people." Yet others in Congress remain silent, wary of upsetting a delicate diplomatic balance. For the viewer, stories like this are not just distant news. They are a reminder that behind every headline are real people, families whose grief is made heavier by the weight of politics, borders, and global interests. Every victim has a story, a set of dreams, a network of loved ones left behind. Understanding these events is the first step to not tuning out, even when the news feels overwhelming or repetitive. How can ordinary people make a difference? By staying informed, sharing credible sources, and engaging in factual discussions, viewers can help keep the pressure on leaders to seek justice and accountability. In a world where social media amplifies both truth and misinformation, critical thinking is more important than ever. But the implications go beyond individual stories. The intersection of international diplomacy, economic interests, and technology now shapes conflicts like these in unprecedented ways. For example, the debate over United States sanctions on violent settlers, which were lifted earlier this year, shows how economic tools can impact behavior, or fail to, depending on how they are applied. Financial sanctions, travel bans, and arms embargoes have become standard levers in the international system, but their effectiveness depends on political will and follow-through. Technology, too, plays a double-edged role. Surveillance equipment, drones, and social media platforms are used both to monitor abuses and to spread propaganda. Footage of incidents like Musallet's killing can go viral in minutes, sparking outrage and mobilizing communities thousands of miles away. But the same networks can also be used to distort facts or inflame divisions. Understanding how these tools work and how they are wielded by states and non-state actors alike is essential for anyone seeking to interpret the news or influence policy. There are precedents for change. In the past, high-profile killings of foreign nationals have sometimes forced governments to act. For example, the death of American activist Rachel Corrie in Gaza 2 decades ago led to congressional hearings and temporary changes in United States policy. The killing of journalist Shireen Abu Akleh, a dual Palestinian-American citizen, in 2022 also prompted calls for investigation and, for a brief period, greater scrutiny of military aid. But in most cases, the momentum fades, investigations stall, and the status quo resumes. So, will the killing of Sayfollah Musallet spark real change? History suggests that moments like this can serve as catalysts, but only if they are not allowed to fade into background noise. The initial strong words from United States officials are significant, but as so many experts and families have noted, what matters most is follow-through. If this tragedy prompts ongoing American engagement, perhaps even a reevaluation of aid and diplomatic strategy toward the region, it could shift the dynamic, if only slightly. If not, it risks becoming yet another forgotten name in a long list of victims. Here is a little-known but telling fact. Since the start of the latest conflict in October of 2023, at least 5 American citizens have lost their lives in the West Bank alone. Each of these cases has generated promises of investigation, but few have led to lasting results. The lesson? Change depends not just on governments, but on the public's refusal to look away. Sustained attention and advocacy can keep the spotlight on abuses and create the conditions for policy change. Looking forward, experts see several possible scenarios. One is that international pressure, including from European governments, the United Nations, and American civil society, could force Israel to conduct more transparent investigations and rein in settler violence. Another is that, absent serious intervention, the violence will continue to escalate, with more fences, more demolitions, and more lives lost. In this scenario, the already remote possibility of a two-state solution grows ever dimmer, replaced by a reality of permanent occupation and disenfranchisement. Some analysts suggest that the involvement of international legal bodies, such as the International Criminal Court, could bring a measure of accountability. Recent years have seen a growing willingness to pursue legal cases against individuals accused of war crimes or human rights abuses, though such efforts are often slow and hampered by political obstacles. Yet, lasting peace will require more than investigations or legal rulings. It demands a willingness from both sides to acknowledge each other's legitimate claims and to engage in meaningful negotiations. This is a daunting prospect in an environment marked by mutual distrust, trauma, and a long history of broken promises. For now, the world is watching and waiting. The next moves in Washington and Jerusalem could reshape the entire region. Will the United States government match words with action? Will Israeli authorities hold perpetrators accountable? Or will impunity continue to reign? The answers will have consequences, not just for policy and diplomacy, but for the daily lives of millions of people caught in the crossfire. For viewers in the United States and around the world, the story of Sayfollah Musallet is a call to pay attention, to demand better from leaders, and to recognize that the ripples of violence in one small town can reach far beyond its borders. When we understand the stakes, we can no longer afford to look away. If you found this video insightful, please subscribe to our channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think it will take for real change to happen in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? What role should the United States play? Stay tuned for our next deep dive into the complex global forces shaping our world. Together, by seeking understanding and demanding accountability, we can help ensure that tragedies like this do not go unnoticed.